When were you elected to council and as mayor?
I was elected, oh, wait a minute. I just gave you that information.
It was 1955?
Yeah, that's when I was elected to as mayor.
And how long had you served on council?
5 years.
So 1950 you were elected. Okay. And how long did your term go as mayor? Till
6 years.
6 years till 61.
Yeah.
Okay. How and why was the Civic Center built?
How and why was the Civic Center built?
Yes.
Well, really it was Mayor Harrington's idea.
He was the mayor before you?
Yeah, he was the mayor who preceded me. And for some time, a lot of people in town thought we should have a building of that sort in the community. And so we had some plans drawn for the thing, and we went to a general obligation bond on the thing. And a lot of people were disappointed. Some of the people thought it was going to be a youth center. Maybe you knew that. They thought it was going to be a youth center. Well, it didn't end up as a youth center. It ended up as a entertainment center. I mean, for basketball and other activities and so on and so forth. And they were a little put out about it, but anyway, it was built on a general obligation bond. And I think it has served a purpose in the community. It isn't the acoustics are horrible on the thing and so on and so forth, but I wasn't on the building committee, so I didn't have anything to do with that. But I really think it has served a useful purpose in the community. Hope College has certainly used it a lot for their basketball games. The high school used to use it, and so did Christian High use it for basketball. And at Tulip Time it's used extensively, and it's used for other affairs. They usually have art fairs down there, and during the week why older people go down there and play shuffleboard and that sort of stuff. So I think it gets pretty good use, and I think that, and actually it wasn't really built for what a lot of people thought it was going to be built. You know where that antique place is there on 8th Street there?
Yeah.
Right next door to there used to be a building there, an old store building, where this court is now. And they had a youth center in there where the kids would meet and so on and so forth, you know. And I think a lot of people thought that that's what this was going to be, and an extension of that there was going to be a youth director down there and that sort of thing. Well, it didn't turn out to be that, but that was beside the point, I guess.
What was that land where the Civic Center was built used for? Was that a swamp or something?
Originally it was a tannery.
Oh.
It was a Capon tannery. And on the north side of 8th Street, they had great big sheds down there. I can remember it as a kid. And they had great big sheds down there where they had all the bark and everything else stored in there that they'd use in the tanning process and so on. On the west end of that property, where the Civic Center actually is sitting, the water table is kind of high, and they have to keep pumps going day and night in there to keep the water pumped out in there. In fact, I think they have their own generator in there in case the power fails, that the pumps can keep on going. But I'm not sure about that.
Okay. There was a lot of annexation during your term. I was wondering what process was used for the annexation of all that land to the city.
Well, that gets kind of complicated. Now, do you want a very big, long, complicated explanation on it, or just what we did I'll put it simply. There were petitions signed to annex to the city of Holland, and the city had to sign it, and the people in the areas had to sign it. It's in there. Originally, it was to go all the way to Lake Michigan and so on, include the whole West Ottawa district, what is West Ottawa district now, and out south of town, which is now annexed and so on. And it was brought up by two things. The people over there wanted city services, city type of services, and also all the kids from that whole area out there were going to the Holland Public Schools. And so it was kind of a two-way deal. I mean, if they wanted to go to the Holland Public Schools, they were going to have to become part of the school district. And the school district and the city, in order to get the taxes right, had to be contiguous. And you follow me on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the people on the north side weren't happy about this whole thing at all. And they said that well, Holland didn't have any fire protection, and we could fight the fire better with water buckets in the Holland fire department, and that. They got pretty involved and pretty nasty, and so on and so forth. And there was a lot of work done on them, pros and cons. So finally, it was defeated by the people on the north side. The people in the city voted in favor of them. People out there voted were opposed to it. Well, finally we reduced I was mayor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Finally we reduced the boundaries on the thing, and took in the Maplewood area and part of Holland Heights. I forgot exactly. There were several annexations on this thing, as you probably know. And so the people then, it was a contiguous boundary. That was a law at the time. I mean, you couldn't charge the people, let's see how to put it. The millage would have been less for the people outside of the city on the school district than it would be inside the city, which we didn't think was really a fair situation. And the people in West Ottawa thought it would be. They went ahead and built their own school system and so on and so forth. Well, actually, the city of Holland is probably better off that we didn't annex all of that area out there. Because the need of city services out there, I mean, water and sewer and streets and all of that sort of stuff. And really, when you get down to it, I think their millage is as high or higher than we are paying here in the city of Holland. So then besides that, they're having to pay for all of these sewer extensions and water extensions. We had an employee, I forgot how much, he said it was going to cost them to put the water in front of their house and the sewer in front of their house. My gosh, it was astronomical. And back in those days, you had to pay for the water. I guess you had to pay for the sewer too, but it was a real low rate, nothing compared to what it is today. Of course, everything is up to date, but I know if it had been done back in those days, it would have been a lot cheaper for those people to be within the city. And we had the water plant on the north side over there. So we could have furnished them the water. That was the point. But it got pretty involved. I mean, in fact, it got pretty dirty at times. But between Walter Scott, who was superintendent of the school, and the school district, the school board, and the council, and Herb Holt, who was city manager at that time. We got things worked out. We had a lot of meetings. I mean, just Walter Scott, Herb, and myself. And I think we got the thing worked out pretty well. And then Scott Bagby was our planning consultant at the time. He wasn't too much in favor of this whole thing. He said, go ahead and give them all the services and so on and so forth. And you don't have to annex them all. Well, I'm glad we did annex what we did annex. Because we got the whole industrial park out there and all that sort of stuff, which has made a good tax base. I've been crying about this mall thing, losing the taxes on that mall deal. But if you take all the taxes that are out there in the industrial park and Hayworth's and Prince Corporation and all of that stuff, that mall thing is peanuts compared to it.
It's minor peanuts, yeah, very small.
And so really, I mean, that was, I don't know what the taxes are in that area out there, but I imagine it's, well, Donnelly's and Squirt Pack and all of those companies out there amount to a lot of tax dollars. It takes up a lot of the slack that the citizens really don't have, the house residents, homeowners don't have to pay. And well, like you take East Grand Rapids, the only thing you've got up in East Grand Rapids that approaches anything up there is Gaslight Village. All the rest of it is homeowners. Well, they have to pick up all the school taxes and running the city and everything else except for one little parcel up there called Gaslight Village. Well, that gets to be a pretty expensive operation. And we were getting pretty much that way here in town. I mean, we had to get some industry in town. Okay.
Yes.
Did I answer that to your satisfaction?
I think you answered the next few questions that I had too. Were there any problems with all the land that was just annexed, like services and?
Not really.
Not really.
No. The GE finally became in the city. They weren't in the city at first. Just like that federal district isn't in the city, you know, that one little square down there. Where Denoyer is and so on and so forth, and Art Cooley. Kmart and so on. That was because of a bunch of hardheads that lived down there, residents that lived down there. Being down there, they didn't want to become part of the city. But when GE came into town, they wanted water and sewer, which was understandable. And they paid for the whole shot themselves. I mean, they put the water and the sewer in out there to GE. Well, we extended all these other, when we were next, the city extended, and it was a costly thing. I mean, there's no two ways about it to run all these trunk lines out there to these people and so on. And the paving and so on out there. But in the long run, I think the city came out ahead on that. And as far as the water and the sewer is concerned, well, the sewer at that time was controlled by the city, not by the DPW. And the water was controlled by the DPW. But so the DPW got returns from, and it wasn't until about my second year as mayor, I think, that we started charging sewer service fees in the city. Other than that, why, the sewer was free to everybody. And so all these outfits had their sewer for free. I mean, the use of the lines and so on. Well, then they had to start adding onto the sewer disposal plant and all that sort of stuff. They had to get monies from someplace, and so then it came down to whether to levy taxes on the thing or to have a sewer service charge. Well, originally it was just a flat fee, so much a month for home, $12 per quarter, I guess it was, or something like that. And then depending on what the industry was, well, then they metered the water for the industries. But we never went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And our credit rating was always good on the revenue bonds and even on GOs. But a lot of this stuff we did on revenue bonds. Didn't have a bit of trouble with it at all.
What was the relationship between the city and the hospital?
Well, it was generally always pretty good. If the hospital needed an addition, one time they tried another method on it, but usually it was pretty good. I always sat in on the board meetings. That was owned and operated then by the city. It isn't like it is now. It isn't like Holland Community Hospital, I guess is what they call it. And I always used to sit in on a meeting. Well, the city used to kick in quite a bit of money to the hospital to cover up their deficits. And so I said, this is kind of stupid. It's a going business. They should be able to operate the thing on a break-even basis. And so I told them at a board meeting, I said, no more contributions from the city. And this was, well, it wasn't a great deal of money, but it was money that we could use other places. And boy, gosh, you thought I'd thrown a bomb in that room up there in that board. What the world was coming to an end, you know. Well, the city's always done this. I said, well, not anymore. I said, you work out your budget some way, or your rates or something else, so that you can come up with a balanced budget. And they have ever since then. But they weren't too happy about that. But anyway, we got along real fine after that. And, I always got along with the administrator up there at that time. Fred Bird was his name. And I always got along with him real well. And with the other members on the board. John Donnelly was president of the board, and Clarence Becker was president of the board. So they were friends of mine, and they understood too. They were businessmen.
Okay.
You didn't have anything in here that I can see about with the BPW.
Would you like to talk about the BPW?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the BPW, the power plant here in the town, basically has been a good operation for the city. There have been members of council that have wanted to sell it to consumers and so on. We had one member that was vehement on it when I was on the council. And anything that the BPW wanted to do, he was against it, and expansion or anything like that. And on the original charter that was written, I mean, not the original charter, the charter we are operating under now, the city was to get 50% of the net profit of the BPW. Well, they had to get into some expansion programs and so on. So, because the use of electricity kept on climbing up. But so we reduced our income to a set amount. I forgot what it was, 100,000, 150,000 or something like that. The budgets back in those days were nothing like they are today. But anyway, we reduced our take from the BPW. But really, I think it's been a real asset to the city of Holland. I mean, the power plant, the water plant, people are grumbling about the sewer service charges, but if that's what it has to be, that's what it has to be. I mean, what else can it be? But I think that the board has been well run over all the years, and I'm real proud of their operation down there. Now, our electricity here in town costs us considerably less than the people that are buying from consumers in the area. And they're probably, well, consumers is going to go up now with this Midwest deal and so on and so forth. But I think that originally, see, the board members were elected. You knew that. And then under the new charter, well, then they were appointed by the mayor and the council. Well, the DPW was real upset about that. I mean, the board members were real upset about it. But they kind of finally came around to recognize the fact that that was probably, they didn't want to be subservient to the council. That was, the council is the governing body of the city. At least it should be. And so as I said, being repetitious, that I'm real proud of the BPW and what they've done for the people of the city and so on. A lot of people gripe about them, but I mean, they don't know the inner workings of it at all.
What were your council meetings like?
They were really pretty good. The old council, when I was first on it, before the new charter, we had 2 council members from every ward. There wasn't anybody from a large. Well, that used to get a little sticky once in a while. Not too bad. Not when I was, before I was on it, when I was, they used to get some pretty big fat fights up there. But anyway, after I got, when Harry was mayor, well, he ran a good council, and Steffens ran a pretty good council. And what I did, I instituted, you can't do it today. You have your study session, you call them, today, where the public is invited and so on and so forth. Well, we met the night that we had council meetings, we met down at the hotel and we had a dinner downtown. And we talked over the agenda and so on and so forth. And we wouldn't take any vote on things, but people would express their opinions. And, I mean, you couldn't take a vote. I mean, you'd have to, well, some people started saying, well, everything was cooked and dried. Well, it probably was cooked and dried. But it made for a nice, smooth council meeting. And you'd get into a few little squabbles once in a while on the floor. Everybody wouldn't agree, even in the pre-council meeting. But our council meetings will last all the way from 20 minutes when you get through all the rigmarole, you know, to maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours even. But I always got along real well with my council members. I didn't have any trouble with any of them. I was real proud of that. There was one fellow by the name of Ray Howard, who used to be principal of the Christian school. And Ray and I'd get into a little tango once in a while, but it was a friendly thing. I mean, he knew me and I knew him, and he was an ultra-conservative, and I'd classify myself more as a moderate, but he was really an ultra-conservative, which was all right, I suspect. But he was a nice fellow. But other than that, why the council got along real well.
What was the downtown area like?
Much as it is today, except for the parking. We were real short. The only parking we had practically was on River Avenue and on 8th Street. Well, Herb and I tried to get through a deal where we would buy up a bunch of property from the city for parking downtown. And this was, and we went to a vote on it. We didn't have to, but we went to a vote on it. People turned it down. What we could have done is, the reason we went to a vote because we could get a lower rate of interest doing it under a GO than under a revenue bond. And the people turned it down. They said, we'll let the downtown merchants provide all their own parking. So that isn't the city's obligation. Well, if people want to park someplace, you have to furnish parking spaces for them. So I don't think you don't, they're going to go some other place to park. Well, anyway, then we started working on, we had some money in the parking meter fund. And so we bought some property. Well, that caused a stink. And some of the people that we used up the money in the parking meter fund. Then we went into lease arrangements with some of the people, like the Holland Sentinel owns some property behind that. And do you remember when the Kresge's was in Holland? Probably not. You know where Tierman's is and all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a lot of that property was owned by the Brooks estate, or the Walsh estate, I should say. So we worked out arrangements with them to lease the property. And then we condemned some houses on 9th Street across from where the Armory is. I think there were 3 houses in there that we had condemned for parking. And we paid for that out of the parking. I mean, we had some money in the parking. So, if it hadn't been for, I'm not hanging myself up, putting myself on the mantle or anything, if it hadn't been for Urban myself on the thing, we still wouldn't have had any parking. And downtown is going to die, and I wish they'd take all the parking meters right off of 8th Street and be done with it. And I think the council will finally come around to that conclusion these days. That's what should be done. But really, there hasn't been much change in the buildings, and so on. Some of them have improved. I mean, like Tierman's and Locker Ruckers. First of Michigan improved. They took out some old buildings down in there. There was a theater in there, and I don't know, some other buildings in there. Mercedes had a building in there. The bank bought those all up, put in their own private parking and so on. So there's been some, but there's a lot to be done as far as facelifting in the downtown area, I think. To improve it, I mean, make it look better anyway. Now, if you can get these Hollanders to go ahead and spend the money for it or not, that's going to be something else.
Yeah. Okay. And what did the municipal judge do? We don't have that office anymore.
No. He did what the district court does today.
Yes.
And he was a real good guy. His name was He was Vandermeer. And he did I think, a bang-up job as a municipal judge. And, but I mean, he would take care of traffic violations and the drunks and small claims and all of that sort of stuff. So it was about what the district court is.
It was an elected position?
Yeah, elected.
Okay, and there seemed to be a lot of public improvements, like paving streets and sidewalks done. I was wondering why this was done and how it was financed.
Well, I told you yesterday, I believe, that the sidewalks were all paid for by the, I mean, in fact, I was looking through all that stuff, it's in there, the council orders in, I don't know how many blocks of sidewalks and so on and so forth. And you had 30 days to comply with it. And if you didn't, well, the city would come on and do it and charge you for it, put it on your tax bill or something like that. Now on the paving, that was a deal where you, they would come, over 50% of the people in the block, excuse me, sign a petition requesting the paving. And then the council would hold a hearing on it. And then they would order it in or not order it in. Usually they would order it in because they had had the initial petition of over 50%. And the people could pay it all off at the end of the deal and not pay any interest on it. And if they chose, they could pay it off over a 10-year period, and it was financed by revenue bonds. I mean, they weren't general obligation bonds, they were revenue bonds. And which worked out all right. I mean, a person paid off their paving bill over 10 years. But the sidewalks were just ordered in. That was all there was to it.
Were those mainly ordered in the annexed areas?
No,
just all over?
All over it.
So there was no real set sidewalk plan before that?
Well, yeah.
Or it wasn't followed?
Yeah, it was followed. See, I mean, the old original town went up to 16th Street. You knew that, didn't
Yes.
you? Okay. Up to 16th Street. And then the state came on in and ordered the city, I don't know if they went to 24th Street that time and then went to 32nd Street. I think they went to from 16th Street to 32nd Street. Don't hold me to that, but that's the way I recollect. That's before I was born or anything. The state just came on in and said, this is the city of Holland. And they went on over to Fairbanks Avenue and jogged around that way. So that's how that happened. And but all of that wasn't paved. When I was a kid, we used to live down on 13th Street between College and Central. College and Central. When I was a kid, 13th Street wasn't paved. I mean, but the sidewalk was in. And then eventually they paved 13th Street. They kept on moving the pavement. We had a real good city engineer. In fact, I found a picture of him and all this stuff. He'd been city engineer for 46 years. And when he retired, the council gave him a lounge chair, like in the library in there, and gave him that. But he was a real good city engineer, and he had all of this stuff planned out real well, and so on and so forth. And we didn't have the equipment we have today. I mean, the mechanical equipment and so on. So in the wintertime, he had a big work crew. I mean, a tremendous work crew. And they used to do a lot of hand shoveling of snow on 8th Street and all of that sort of stuff. They didn't have snow loaders and so on. But then they dig in. Maybe I'm rattling on too much.
No.
like when they put the sewer line in out here on 28th Street, they dug that all by hand. And they put down piling, or sheeting rather, not piling, sheeting. And they'd get down there and they'd go down there and dig that all out, and they'd put the pipe down on the ground down there and kept on going that way and so on. Well, that's the way he kept his workforce busy when they weren't shoveling snow or doing something else.
That would keep them busy.
Yeah, keep them busy. But Jake did a marvelous job. He really did. He was well thought of, well respected in the city of Harlan by everybody. And, so you got to give a lot of credit to Jake for developing this plan for the streets and the sidewalks and all of that sort of stuff.
What were some of your highlights as mayor?
Well, I think the annexation was probably the highlight of that.
That about doubled the city, didn't it?
Oh, more than double.
More than double?
Yeah, the city was only 2 square miles. No, 2 miles square, I should say, not 2 square miles. It's 2 miles square. It's 2 miles from north to south and 2 miles from east to west. Well, that isn't very much territory. When you ride around today and see how much, and nothing has been annexed since I've been out of office.
It's a lot of territory.
So we took in a lot of land, and I think that really I think that was a highlight of mine. Well, there are other highlights, being president of the league and Michigan Municipal League and all that sort of stuff. That was a real honor. And I got to know a lot of wonderful people. Some people that weren't so wonderful, but I mean more wonderful ones than weren't wonderful. And getting back to the league thing, I got to know a lot of wonderful people through the league. And one of the highlights was up at Mackinac Island at their annual meeting up there. John Huss, who was director of the league at the time, sat me down next to Bishop Sheehan. You remember Bishop Sheehan? Never heard of him? Well, he used to be on the radio or on the television. He was a Catholic bishop. And I always enjoyed him on the television and so on. But I really got to enjoy him up there at the Mackinac Island. It was Friday night. We were having our big deal up there. Everybody was having prime rib and so on, except the Catholics. And they had fish on the menu for the Catholics. He turned to me and said, I just hate fish.
Anything else you wish to comment on at all, or?
Well, I don't know. It'll probably take too much of your time already.
Oh no.
And but I was having fun going through a lot of this stuff. And
these are all pieces of your scrapbook.
Yeah. And well, my wife kept all this stuff. Some of them were one person here in the community, and I'm glad you asked him to participate in this whole deal, is Bill Wickers. And I think Bill has been one of the real fine institutions in this community. No, really, I mean, no, maybe you shouldn't call a person an institution, but I think Bill is an institution. And he's done so much for the city of Holland in so many different areas. Being on the planning commission, I was on the planning commission with him. I was a council representative of the planning commission when I was just on the council, and then of course I was sat on it as mayor. But Bill and I always got along real fine.